early in the process of talking to Marvel, did the subject of the Winter Soldier come up? Like, I mean, obviously Bucky has a bit of an accident in the first film, so were you kind of always confident that you'd be able to return?
Yes and no. I mean, when I first talked to them, it was before we hadn't even shot the first film, and so I was aware of the arc of the character, but I didn't know actually we were going to do it this soon. I thought maybe it was going to be later. So all of that I found out a lot later on.
Okay. So what were kind of the earliest talks, like bringing you back and kind of talking about just?
Well, there weren't those talks.
Okay.
It was more when initially the character was introduced to me. I mean, when I auditioned for actually I never auditioned for Bucky Barnes. I actually went for Steve Rogers. But when I encountered the material, I didn't know anything about it. So I had no, and there was no script that I could read or see, and I hadn't read the comic book. So they sort of educated me on the character of Bucky Barnes and what happens. And so those were the only talks I had at that time.
Gotcha. And kind of just entering into the mentality of this character, I mean, the interesting thing about the Winter Soldier is that he is kind of a blank slate. He has his memory cleaned out. I mean, he has no kind of emotional connections. So when you are in those early scenes kind of operating as, like, what is your mental state? Like, how are you thinking as the Winter Soldier?
It was much more direct and simple. Sort of cause and effect type mentality.
Okay.
The guy really operated from receiving an order to carrying it out no matter what, letting nothing else stop him in between. There was no other point of view, there was no second emotion, no second thinking about it, second guessing. It was just carry out the order. So I tried to have a very sort of kind of same type of frame of mind to just,
you kind of just like clear your mind of everything, just straight.
Well, it was just sort of very kind of day by day, actually. It was instead of kind of, thinking about, wow, where's this going to go? What are they going to be thinking when they see this? Or maybe he's, in those early scenes, it was very specific to me to establish that neutral yet very kind of direct, dangerous presence. So I wanted to just be as specific as possible as opposed to ambiguous about what I was communicating, especially when I only had the eyes to do it.
Totally. And I mean, that physicality and like the character and the costume, like how does that all kind of come into your performance, especially the metal arm?
Well, it all kind of feeds itself. There is that saying that once in a while, you should just let the wardrobe and the costume do the acting for you. I mean, in this case, before I step on, in those early scenes, especially, like, I take one look at myself and just see how I actually looked, and I was like, if I'm just literally standing here looking like this. And it was funny because oftentimes when I had those goggles, no one could tell where I was looking. So it was like I had and it made people very uncomfortable, in a good way. Like, people were really, and so all of that, I was like, maybe just stand here and deliver, walk with purpose and let the presence of the costume speak for itself. Totally.